Hi guys, it's Amber from Amber Eats Books, and I'm here today to bring you my January wrap-up. I had an incredible reading month in the month of January. I read 15 books, which is completely unheard of lately. I do not know how I even managed to fit all of these in, but I did not feel rushed. I did not feel stressed. It was fantastic, and I read some pretty incredible books, so let's get right into them. The first 4 books I'd like to discuss are all part of a series that I've been enjoying for quite some time, and that is numbers 5 through 8 of a series of unfortunate events. I read books 1 through 4 when my children were a lot younger. I read them to them out loud and really enjoyed them. The Reptile Room was probably my favorite one out of those 4. And then we moved into the next set, but I didn't really keep up with it. Like, I started book 5, but I don't know if I ever finished it, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish them. But then the Netflix series came out, and I really have enjoyed being able to compare my memories of the books to this new series, and I know the next installment comes out in March, so I wanted to at least have read the next 4 books to kind of keep up with it. I may pick up another book or 2 in the month of February, I'm not sure yet, but these are ones that I finished, and I really enjoyed them for the most part. Those were The Austere Academy, The Airsats Elevator, The Vile Village, and Hostile Hospital. I gave 3 stars to the first 2 and 4 stars to the last 2. They were just really cute, really fun and entertaining, and listening to them was fantastic. I will say that number 5, The Austere Academy, had a different narrator, and I didn't enjoy that one quite as much, but then the last 3 that I've listened to has Tim Curry narrating them, and it was just fantastic to listen to him narrate. So I've had a lot of fun listening to these, and they're great because I can put them on in the car with the kids and stuff, and I don't have to worry about anything. So really enjoying it and can't wait to pick up more. The next book I'd like to talk about is The Dark Days Pact by Alison Goodman. This is book 2 in a series, so I can't really give you a synopsis. This definitely continues on from the Dark Days Club, right where it left off. I really enjoyed the Dark Days Club. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, and I just thought it was fun and something to just kind of escape into. It had a pretty cool premise that I really hadn't read about before, so I really enjoyed it. This book, however, because I enjoyed the first one so much, this one just kind of let me down a little. I mean, I gave it 3 stars. I think that it was just okay. It really suffered from second book syndrome, I feel like. It just didn't deliver on a lot of things. It just talked and talked and talked about all the stuff that was going to happen, and then you get closer to the end of the book and you realize there's not enough time for all of these things to happen, and then it just kind of stops in the middle of the action. It really left kind of like a bad taste in my mouth. I don't know if I'm going to pick up book 3. I may at some point, just because I want to finish out the trilogy, but for right now, I think I might just leave it at this because it was just, like I said, okay. The first line in this book is, "At Lord Carlston's bidding, Lady Helen Rexall studied the gentleman walking rapidly toward them up the rise of Brighton's Marine Parade." The next book I picked up in January was for Russell at Ink and Paper Blog's Goodreads group. I believe he calls it his Around the World in 1,000 Pages book club. This was The Changeling by Victor Laval. I was really happy to pick up this book because I saw Russell haul this, I think it was a couple of months ago, and I thought the cover was just gorgeous, and the premise sounded really good. This is about a man named Apollo who has lost his father at a young age. His father just disappears one day, and he has kind of been having to deal with the aftermath of that. But even so, he has grown up, he's getting married, he's having a child, and then this very tragic event happens, and the book kind of just takes a turn from there. I loved the first half of this book. I thought it was just so wonderfully written, and just the characters and how they were portrayed was just fantastic. Then we moved into the second half of the book where all of a sudden you are kind of jolted out of reality and pushed into this fantastical kind of magical realism type world. And it was just a little too much for me, I have to say. As much as I loved the writing and stuff in the first half, the second half really brought down my reading experience because it felt very jumbled and miscombobulated, and I just didn't feel like it flowed as well as the first half. And I thought that the characters started to just become so unrealistic at a point that I could not suspend my disbelief, and I just was not into it as much as I wanted to be. So it was a little disappointing because, like I said, I loved it so much to begin with, but then towards the end, I just couldn't get over how things changed, and I ended up only giving it 3 stars. I don't have the first sentence because I had to return the book to the library because someone else wanted it. The next book I read was See What I Have Done by Sarah Schmidt. I was really excited to pick this up because I had read many mixed reviews on it. I wanted to kind of see where I fell on the spectrum of people either really loving it or people not liking it so much. So I went into it really open-minded and really kind of hopeful that I would fall in love with it. This is based on the account of Lizzie Borden. Her father and stepmother were murdered inside of her house. Many people believe that Lizzie was the one to do it. However, this book kind of makes you question that and see it from all different sides. I liked the writing in this book. I thought it was pretty good, but I think I was a little too familiar with the story. I feel like I've read another book about this, but it was more like a nonfiction account. And then I watched a TV show based on this called The Lizzie Borden Chronicles. Was it? And it had, I think, Christina Ricci as Lizzie. So I was already familiar with all of the story to begin with. So I didn't feel like this really gave me enough new material to make me love it, but I still really enjoyed reading it. I thought that especially the chapters that were the maid and another character named Benjamin, I thought those were my favorite, and it was nice to kind of see an outside perspective on a lot of things. So if you guys are interested in Lizzie Borden and you just want to have a fun, entertaining way to pass a couple of hours, I would definitely pick this book up. I still think it's worth the read. The first sentence in this book is, "He was still bleeding." The next book I picked up was Now That You Mention It by Kristen Higgins. I went into this book not really expecting a whole lot because I had read another book by Kristen Higgins and I thought it was just okay. But I was actually sent this book by the publisher, so thank you, Harlequin, for sending it to me. And I thought, why not give it a try? I'm getting it for free. I will definitely give an honest review. And I really ended up enjoying this book. This follows the story of Nora, who has recently just gone through a very tough time and is heading back home, and she knows that she's not really going to be welcome with open arms. So she goes through this book trying to find not only her place in her family, but her place in just the world. And I felt like this book went so far beyond a regular, like, contemporary romance. Was there romance in here? Yes, there was definitely some of that in here. But there was enough depth to this story that I really ended up enjoying it, and I gave it 4 stars. The first line in this book is, "The first thought I had after I died was, how will my dog cope with this?" Another book I picked up and read this month was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Now, this one I actually finished on January 1st. I had started at the end of December, so this could have made it into my December wrap-up, but whatever, things just got away from me. So I went into this book knowing that I was probably going to love it, and I did. I ended up rating this 4 stars. I had watched the movie so many times when I was younger that it felt like I was cuddling up with, like, an old friend. Like, it just felt so familiar and so warm and so welcoming. I cannot wait to pick up another book by her later in the year. The first line in this book is, "Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents," grumbled Joe, lying on the rug. The next book I read in January was actually an audiobook that I listened to, and that was All the Birds Singing by Evie Wilde. Now, this was a book that was very interesting. I picked it up just on a whim. My library doesn't buy too many copies of the really popular books that I really want to get to, so I normally end up just picking out books that are available right at that moment, and this just happened to be one of them. I was kind of sucked in by the cover of it and then read the synopsis and thought it might be something that I'd be interested in. This is following the story of a woman named Jake. She has had a rough life and is now living in this place all on her own, raising sheep. We kind of find out that she's running from something, that something in her past has happened. What is unique about this book is that it kind of keeps jumping time periods in her life. So you go through her present day storyline like in a forward motion. So you're following her storyline, but you go with her past in a backwards motion. It is just very, very unique. And at first I didn't think I was going to continue reading the book because I was getting a little confused, mainly probably because it's an audiobook, I wanted to say, because I couldn't see where things were actually separated, and if there was any sort of header or anything. I don't know. So I didn't know if I was going to continue with it. But what really drew me in were these very suspenseful scenes. They were just written in such a way that got me on the edge of my seat, which has never happened to me with an audiobook before. And I just was completely immersed into the story after listening to a couple of these scenes. I was like, well, I have to keep reading it because now I want to know what happens. The jumping around was what was getting me a little bit, but when I finally got the rhythm of that and how they were going in time, I was really impressed. And by the time we got to the end of the story, I was like, wow, this was fantastic. I am so impressed that I cannot wait to pick up another book by her. And I ended up rating this 4 stars. I do not have the first line because it was an audiobook. The next book I picked up was The Child Finder by Renee Denfield. First of all, I absolutely love this cover. It is just gorgeous. Second of all, I fell in love with the story. This is a thriller about an actual child finder. She goes out and tries to find these missing children. So we get the story from her point of view, and we also get the story from a child that has been taken's point of view. It was really interesting to go back and forth between these two perspectives. Also, the writing in this book was just fantastic. It was so fairy tale-esque, which is not something you normally get in thrillers, and it really worked for me. I know a lot of people in the group did not feel like it worked for them. I think even Lisa said it really wasn't her favorite style of writing, but for some reason, I just really loved it. And I now know that this is the first book in a series, and I cannot wait to pick up the second book because now I want to know what happened to Naomi to bring her to this point in her life. But it was very interesting, and I highly recommend it. I gave this 4 stars. The first line in this book is, "The home was a small yellow cottage on an empty street." The next book that I read this month was another audiobook that I listened to, and that was The Selection by Kira Cass. This is the story of America, who is one out of 35 girls who are competing to be the next princess. I heard someone say that it was kind of like The Hunger Games meets The Bachelor, and that is definitely the perfect analogy for this book. I thought it was going to be cheesy. I thought it was going to be over the top, which it definitely was in many places. What I did not expect was how much I was going to enjoy it. I actually ended up giving this book 4 stars. I was addicted. I could not stop listening to it. I was listening to it in the shower. I was listening to it while I folded laundry. I was listening to it just anywhere and everywhere that I could until it was finished. When I finished it, I immediately went on to try to see if there was the next audiobook, and there wasn't, so I have to actually get a physical copy of the second book called The Elite. So I will be getting that sometime in the month of February. I don't know if I'll read it in February, but I will definitely have it on my list of books that could be a potential to read in February. But yeah, I just ended up really, really enjoying it. It's one of those books that you don't want to love, but somehow sucks you in. So I think that anyone would really just get an entertaining couple of hours out of this. Anyway, I don't have the first line because it was an audiobook. The next book that I want to share with you is one that has now become one of my all-time favorites, and that is The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Marianne Schaefer and Annie Barrows. I picked this up for the Books and Jams read-along group hosted by Krista at Books and Jams. Krista, thank you so much for picking this book because, like I said, it is now one of my favorites. This is told in epistolary format, which is letters written between the characters. I have not read a book like this in a very long time where it was solely letters, and I just fell in love with it. And I felt like this is a book that tackles some very heavy topics because this is taking place right after World War II. And as much as it could be really down and depressing, I found this book so hopeful and so lighthearted in places that it really balanced out that really tough stuff. I just fell in love with some of these characters. I really think that they are now going to be ones that I remember for a very long time, and I cannot wait to do a reread of this book already. I just read it just a month ago, and already I want to read it again. That shows you how much I loved it. I give this 5 stars. The first line in this book is, "Dear Sydney, Susan Scott is a wonder." The next book I read in January was Wolfe Winter by Cecilia Eckbach. This was our January pick for hashtag on the BookTube Shelf Book Club. I will leave all of the links down below if you guys want to join in for our February pick. I love this book. My friend Elisa picked this out, and Elisa, I am so glad that you did. I was not expecting to really love this story as much as I did. I went into it thinking I would definitely enjoy it, but it really just blew me away. This is the story of a family who have come to Sweden. They are living on this mountain, and it is just really stark and cold, and it's their story of survival on this mountain, and it was just fantastic. I fell in love with the writing. The characters were very strong. The plot was strong. Also, reading this in the middle of winter during a snowstorm myself, I could feel and just imagine how the environment was for these characters. I loved it, and I really hope that you guys go out and pick this one up because I feel like not enough people have talked about it. I obviously gave this 5 stars, and the first line in this book is, "But how far is it?" The last book I read in January was Fate's Fool by Robin Hobb. Now this is book 3 of the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the 3rd trilogy in the Realm of the Elderling series. We are so far into this series now that I cannot even give you a synopsis of this book. Just know that this follows Fitz, who has been a main character since the 1st trilogy, and I absolutely adore him. I have read now 6 books with him as a main character, and when you've just read that many books with the same character, you just grow so completely attached to that character, and I am so completely attached to Fitz. I have to say that this book was one of my favorites so far out of the entire series of books, only because it just answered so many questions and gave conclusions to so many things that I was, you know, wondering about or grappling with since the beginning of the series, and I just love that. Are there still questions left to answer? Absolutely. There's so much more I still want to know, but I just feel like this was just beautiful in so many ways. If you have not picked up a Robin Hobb book, what are you doing with your life? Please go out and pick one up. You will not regret it. They're just so good. The first line in this book is, "The White Prophet's premise seems simple." So those were all the books that I read in January. What did you guys end up reading? Did you read anything that you absolutely loved? Anything you absolutely hated? Let me know down in the comments below. I hope you have a great week and happy reading.